As 2023 comes to an end, it looks like the epidemic is once again hitting mainland China on a large scale. The Chinese government has various labels for it, such as Mycoplasma Pneumonia, Influenza, new coronavirus, etc. Many children's hospitals across China are overwhelmed. The Beijing government doesn't seem to think it's serious. Rather, it's inviting more international travelers to come to China.
In order to further promote the high-quality development of Chinese and foreign personnel network services and high-level opening up to the outside world, China has decided to expand the scope of unilateral visa-free countries on a trial basis. Ordinary passport holders from 6 countries, namely France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Spain, Malaysia, do not need visas. From December 1st, 2023 to November 30th, 2024, ordinary passport holders from the above countries who come to China for business, tourism, visiting relatives and friends, and transit for no more than 15 days can enter China without a visa.
WHO does not recommend any specific measures for travelers to China. In general, persons should avoid travel while experiencing symptoms themselves, suggested of respiratory illnesses, if possible. And in case of symptoms during or after travel, travelers are encouraged to seek medical attention and share the history with their healthcare provider. WHO further advises against the application of any travel or trade restrictions based on the current information available on this event.
So what's really happening in China? On November 21, 2023, ProMed, the Global Infectious Disease Surveillance Network, issued an alert that a widespread outbreak of an unknown pneumonia was occurring in mainland China. The following day, the WHO publicly asked China for more information on the outbreak.
There's limited detailed information available to fully characterize the overall risk of these reported cases. However, due to the arrival of the winter season, the increasing trend in respiratory illness is expected. Co-circulation of respiratory viruses may increase the burden on healthcare facilities. According to surveillance data reported to WHO's FluNet and published by the National Influenza Center in China, the level was above usual levels for this time of the year, and increasing in the northern provinces.
Among them, major cities such as Beijing, Tianjin, Shanghai, Dalian, and Shenyang are particularly hard hit. Hospitals have experienced a surge in emergency pediatric visits, and pediatrics departments as a whole are overloaded. Hello everyone, I'm at the Children's Hospital in Beijing. This is the Children's Hospital Outpatient Department. Now, many children have a cold with coughs. There are a lot of people here. Many are both adults attending one child. Across the street is the emergency department. Here is the outpatient department of the Children's Hospital. This hospital is located in Beijing's West 2nd Ring Road. Across the street from the West 2nd Ring Road are the headquarters of many banks and some insurance companies. I'll go in and show you. If you bring a child to see a doctor, you'll need 2 adults. One to keep an eye on the child, and the other to check the child in. This is the first floor of the hospital lobby. I haven't even gone upstairs yet. It's all lines of people waiting. The biggest difference between this wave of epidemic and the previous ones over the past 3 years or so is that apart from adults and the elderly who have been infected, children have also been hit. There are a large number of cases of unidentified pneumonia or even white lungs. Many of them had to have their lungs cleaned, and some had already passed away. Like before, the Beijing government has kept a lid on the current wave of epidemics, making it difficult for the domestic and international communities to know what's really going on. With information blocked, distorted, and compartmentalized, many Chinese parents believe it may be just a case of influenza.
Everywhere in the world, from the day the virus appeared, anyone could catch a cold. I hope people won't blame everything on the pandemic because there is one. Let's use science to approach an issue instead. At the moment, for kids, you can only observe things like self-protection, washing their hands frequently, opening more windows in the home, and getting them to wear masks when they go out. Avoid some cross-infections, and that's good enough. It's not that serious. There are more kids seeing doctors, but maybe it's more about protection. As long as you wash your hands and wear a mask, it shouldn't be a big problem. I do feel a little worried now, so I came to the doctor to check up for myself and my child. Personally, I don't think it's a big deal, because this always happens every year, feeling unwell every year. But this year seems particularly severe, sooner, and the recovery time is longer.
We can see from some official statements and videos circulating on Chinese social media, the epidemic should be very serious. On November 21, 2023, an official from the Disease Control and Prevention Center said that Mycoplasma pneumonia had been rampant for nearly 3 months, and pediatric outpatient clinics were still under high pressure. This past week, major hospitals ranked respiratory syncytial virus third in outpatient visits. Here, a nurse fainted from exhaustion. As the days go by, the epidemic continues to spread. This is a small clinic in a city in central China. This is a private clinic in southwestern China, a relatively backward part. Although the CCP claims that people are suffering from Mycoplasma pneumonia, many children have tested negative for Mycoplasma. So, people have suspected that the official claims of Mycoplasma pneumonia and syncytial viruses are just new labels created by the government to cover up the outbreak. Here's a diagnosis from a military hospital uploaded online by a Chinese netizen. It shows that he was infected with a combination of 5 viruses. He was so confused that he wrote, "There are only 8 viruses that can be checked, but I am actually infected with 5 of them." A doctor in Beijing who was infected told overseas Chinese media, "There is no effective medicine for this wave of infection. I have taken all the medicines that can treat Mycoplasma pneumonia, and they are not effective. So I suspect it's not Mycoplasma pneumonia." In adults and older children, the virus tends to cause upper respiratory tract infections, while children younger than 6 months of age, premature infants, or adults with underlying medical conditions tend to develop lower respiratory tract infections, bronchitis, or pneumonia. There is no particularly effective medication for this. In another post on Weibo, what appears to be a hospital staff wrote, "The hospital's departments have basically fallen into a state of chaos, like when the epidemic restrictions were first lifted. In a department of 12 people, 9 have fevers, 5 have fevers over 39 degrees Celsius or 102.2 Fahrenheit. Even the director, who has the best health, has a fever of 39.4 degrees Celsius or 102.92 Fahrenheit. The pediatric department is packed. There are no beds available. My colleague's nephew, a senior high student, had a CT scan showing white lungs. The kid was so anxious that he cried. He wanted to go back to school. The doctor had to remind him, "Do you want to stay alive or save your grades?" This kid has been hospitalized for more than 20 days and still hasn't recovered. Some parents are becoming desperate.
It's past 8 p.m. Now these experts aren't offering any explanation of the situation. The children have been coughing repeatedly. There is no special medicine for them. And after the cough is gone, they still have a fever. They go home and take medicine for a few days, and then they get a fever again. It has been like this back and forth.
Videos show that hospital staff in various places said that there were too many patients, and it wasn't always possible to get a number right at the triage. People have to grab a number a few days in advance. Some hospitals have emergency clinics with numbers up to 3,000.
I was still waiting in line at the children's hospital to get my number at 10 p.m. last night. The number was over 1,800. The line behind me was over 3,000. At the beginning of November, I sent out a video saying that this was definitely a more serious case. But honestly, I really didn't expect it to be this bad. For the past 2 months, I have done nothing but run to the children's hospital in the morning and then again in the afternoon, and I have been running to the children's hospital every day. I thought that by the end of the month, this wave would be over, but I never thought that it would get worse. There are more than 3,000 numbers in a day. The children's hospital aside, in my residential area, there are 3 health centers. And by the time I got home, it was already 10 p.m., but there were still people lining up there.
This is an electronic screen at a hospital in Tianjin, showing the growing number of people waiting to be triaged. On China's Jihu website, a question reveals the reality of children's hospitals. The question reads, "Reporters actually visited Beijing Children's Hospital, and the average number of people diagnosed in the Department of Internal Medicine was over 7,000 per day, far more than the hospital's capacity. What other information is worth paying attention to?" But schools in China are still running normally. That is, children are required to go to school, complete their homework on time, etc. Thus, students are seen writing homework while on an IV drip.
阳，支原体阳。
Look, my kid is Mycoplasma positive. My daughter told me that every day in her class there are students with a fever of 39, 40 degrees Celsius who insist on attending class. Some parents want their children to get into a good high school, but we just want our child to grow up healthy. Can't we just leave the children alone, at home? My daughter has a fever of over 40 degrees Celsius or 104 Fahrenheit, but she can't be admitted. There is no room in the hospital. I have been holding back my curses for a day now. Do we have to have kids in school at this time? Why do we consider this outbreak to be unusually aggressive? Because under the tight control of the Chinese government, the videos that do get out are often reflecting the tip of the iceberg. The CCP has been non-transparent and extremely secretive about the true state of the plague. When SARS broke out in 2003, the CCP was the first to conceal the outbreak. Former CCP leader Jiang Zemin even ordered local officials to be removed from their posts if SARS broke out in their jurisdiction. Public disclosure of data on the epidemic was completely forbidden. The outbreak eventually spread rapidly throughout the country, Southeast Asia, and even the world, causing enormous loss of life and economic damage. The true number of deaths in China has been hidden by the Chinese government. The CCP used the same cover-up tactics after the Wuhan epidemic broke out in late 2019. 8 whistleblowers, including Dr. Li Wenliang, were summoned and admonished, and many more medical professionals with knowledge of the situation were silenced by the CCP. When the outbreak finally became too much to contain, Beijing hastily declared the lockdown of Wuhan. Prior to the lockdown, the CCP grounded all flights from Wuhan to other Chinese cities, but allowed international flights to continue to operate, thus letting the Wuhan virus spread overseas. The epidemic ravaged the world at a rapid pace, causing an unknown amount of damage to life and property. Now, the Beijing government has announced that from December 1st, 2023 to November 30th, 2024, ordinary passport holders from 6 countries who go to China for business, tourism, visiting relatives and friends, and transit for no more than 15 days can enter China without a visa. Beijing promoted this as good news. Many Chinese diplomats collectively promoted the news on social media. Doesn't all this look familiar? We observe that this Red Party is not only afraid of the outside world knowing the extent of the epidemic, but also is afraid of the public understanding the cause of the epidemic and the traditional cultural interpretation of the origin and purpose of the plague. The Wuhan virus is essentially a plague, but the CCP wouldn't use the word plague at all. Instead, it used various terms such as new coronavirus to describe it. This is the current response of the Chinese government to the World Health Organization.
Children's immunity systems are not well developed. Specific and non-specific immunity functions are not very matured, which may cause easy infection.
When we go back in human history, we will find that behind every plague there is a similar cause. Both East and West have similar descriptions in their classics. Some of our audience find it hard to understand why there have been so many disasters in China in recent years. Is China a cursed land? In our view, China, a country with thousands of years of uninterrupted and profound culture, is a land to be revered. In traditional Chinese culture, the human body and life are highly valued. In a well-known mythological novel, Journey to the West, it is said that there was no luckier thing in the world than if one acquired a human body, was born in the central plane, and encountered an orthodox way to cultivate the body. If one encountered all 3 at the same time, there were no bigger blessings than that. The Journey to the West tells the story of the Monkey King, his master and fellow disciples who traveled to the West to seek the Buddhist scriptures. It is a story of how life can be transcended from a lower realm to higher realms through difficult journeys. It describes an essential concept in traditional Chinese culture: cultivation, a process of constantly improving oneself till one reaches spiritual perfection. A well-known figure in Chinese Taoism wrote that the world's blasphemy against the divines of heaven and earth was the root cause of the plague. Since the CCP took power, it has completely cut off the transmission of traditional Chinese culture and replaced it with the CCP culture. The party culture is characterized by atheism at its core, and it fully promotes a culture of hypocrisy, malice, and conflict. It can be said that in the past 70 years, almost all Chinese people have been victims of the party culture, as the brainwashing education starts from childhood. Chinese people are indoctrinated with the party culture, the warrior wolf ideology, and the concept of conflict in their naive early childhood. The CCP, a red political party, treats life with the utmost disdain. It has caused the deaths of more than 80 million Chinese in peaceful times through a series of political movements. At the same time, society's morality is in a rapid decline, purposely driven by the CCP. For example, the journalist below questioned Wang Jiefu, the former Vice Minister of Health in China. The issue she raised is a daily example of what was going on in China at the height of its economic prosperity.
黄杰夫，请问你
Huang Jiefu, may I ask why you have become the public enemy of the people? Why are there so many voices questioning you online? Can you answer? Can you make it all clear? Huang Jiefu said that by 2023, China will be the world's #1 in organ transplants and will gradually reach 50,000 transplants per year. Then may I ask, in 2020, the number of donated organs was about 5,000, but in 2020, about 20,000 cases were done. May I ask where the parts for the extra 15,000 cases came from? This is my personal question. Then I would like to ask you, if you want to achieve 50,000 transplants per year, may I ask, 45,000 transplants per year, where do you get the extra parts from? Do you dare to disclose the names of all donors for every body part replacement surgery and the real names of the recipients of the body parts?
There is a group of practitioners in China who have been persecuted since 1999. In terms of timeline, these huge numbers of persecuted people are considered to be the biggest source of those body parts. More often than not, many people in and out of China are uninterested or oblivious to such crimes. Can people living in the land of China wake up to the plague and survive it? Perhaps it depends on if they can think deeply about human life and choose for themselves in the battle between good and evil. And the role of people outside of China ought to be more than that of a spectator.